afternoon and all day long. I can't, I'm emotionally exhausted. And her point with her husband is, well, if you wouldn't escalate things all more energy, right? So I just want you to know in your marriage, one of you isn't all right. We both are right, and we both need to compromise and work on things together. So, um, another hard part about having strong-willed kids, they're going to do things the hard way. They make things more difficult than they need to be. We call them stove touchers. They're going to touch the stove, that hot stove, and that is not only what they do, it is necessary for them to do it. It's how they learn best, and it will irritate you, it will scare you, but it's a part of the process, it's part of the design. And you're going to say, but if you would just do it my way, it would be so much easier. But they don't want to do it the easy way. And that's a really good insight for you to know and for you to use to your advantage. Before I forget to say this, I would encourage you, observe your kids. Stop reacting to them. Stop thinking there's something wrong with them. Observe them. They will tell you everything they need by what they do. And so if you have a child, since the day he has been born, he makes things a challenge, then you know that's part of his wiring. And so instead of fighting it and trying to make him be someone he will never be, because that's what we do, try to make him just like you or just like society wants him, it won't work. It will cause frustration and it will ruin your relationship. Instead, I say, okay, I've got a child who likes that. Hey, bet you can't do your chores blindfolded, backwards, right? You do it in different ways, and we do schoolwork in different ways because they like their brains to be stimulated and do it in a different way. And so I just encourage you to observe. Casey, did you need something?
Yes. Can you check what Wi-Fi network you're connected to? Because it's breaking up frequently, and if it's adjustable, that'd be ideal.
Okay.
He's going to be paused for while he connected the new Wi-Fi. There you go. Okay.
Okay.
Try that. Good? Thank you.
You good?
Yep.
Okay. This is part of the new thing that we all struggle with now. So they're stove touchers. You're going to have to lead them. You're going to have to lead them. Casey, you look like you're frozen on my screen. Am I still coming through or no?
You're still coming through, Kirk.
Okay, good. I'll just not look at my son, and that'll be better for me. I'm kidding. So we want to lead these kids. You cannot push them. You must lead them. You must draw them. And then here's another hard part of having the strong-willed child. They are not going to want to do things your way. And this is going to irritate you because you're like, I'm the authority figure. You need to do things my way. And I will encourage you with this in this way. They don't want to do it your way, and partly because they want ownership. It's a really good quality because if we step back and think, why are you here? Now, some of you are here for sibling fights and defiance and disrespect, and we'll get to all that, and getting your kids to listen the first time, we'll get to that. But what we all want is we want kids who grow up to be independent, to be responsible for themselves, to be responsible toward other people. I will tell you, your strong-willed kids have that even better than other people. They just won't do it your way, but they are very independent. You've noticed, look, this is a hard part you're going to run into. There's a lot of hard parts, but like getting them to take lessons, music lessons. They probably don't want to listen to what your music tutor or teacher wants them to do, but they will look up a YouTube video and they will learn that way. They will teach themselves how to do things, but they think other people are stupid and they don't want to listen. And that's going to grate on you, and it should grate on you. I'm not saying any of this is right or good. It's just the way they are. And you can either fight it their entire lives and cause endless power struggles and make everybody miserable, or you can learn how to use their very nature to your advantage. And you can learn another fact, part of this, which is they're probably given to you because you're too rigid and you have control issues and you're too anxious about things. And these kids will cause you to grow up and to mature and to learn patience because they're not the compliant, nice little kids who just do everything that parents and teachers want them to. And in the end, that's a really good quality. And I'm glad they're like that. So they're not going to do it your way. And you're really going to struggle with that. So we'll teach you tonight how to get the kids to do things and do them well, but not necessarily the way you want them done. So in a minute, I'm going to do some toddler and teen things, and then we'll get into all the rest of why you came out. Very quickly, just so you know our background, if you don't want to, I'm not going to do a deep dive on it. If you want to learn about us, go to celebratecalm.com. That's our website, and find out. We have a podcast. It's called the Calm Parenting Podcast. And we have dozens, I think over 100 podcasts. And so you can kind of learn about us that way. But very quickly, we have a very strong one-willed son, Casey, who was very, very difficult. And I spent the first 9 years of his life trying to change him until I finally learned this principle, that the only person in life that I can control is myself. And the quickest way to change your child's behavior is to first control your own. And when I finally came to the realization that I was trying to make him be someone that he wasn't, because he made me very uncomfortable. I didn't like Casey when he was a little kid. He was difficult. He made everything difficult. How many of your kids are like this? If one parent takes them out somewhere, they're awesome. But then as soon as the other parent or other siblings come along, now they're miserable and they create misery among everybody, and there's always fights and dissension, right? That's pretty common. I didn't like Casey because he made everything difficult. And it was just like, why can't you just do it the right way? And can't you just do what I asked you to do? And what I ended up finding out was I was inciting him a lot. And I was amping things up. And a lot of his meltdowns came because I couldn't control myself. And we'll get into that a little bit. But once I got control of myself and my own emotions, it benefited our family in two ways. One, my wife didn't have to manage my emotions for me anymore. The mom I talked to this afternoon, I could hear it in her voice. There's only so much she can do. All day long, she's got 3 kids and she has to manage their emotions and manage them. And then when hubby comes home from work, she has to manage his emotions because he's not patient and he gets on the kids. And so she is becoming emotionally exhausted. And hubby's like, well, you just give so much attention to the kids and you don't have any attention for me. That's true. But likewise, what's true is what she said, which is he escalates things every night. And I'm so exhausted because when he escalates, I have to calm the kids down. And so I don't have energy for him. So if we could work together on it, it would be much better. So anyway, we had Casey and we learned a lot from Casey, and he is an awesome young man. If you ever need anything from Celebrate Calm, you will talk to Casey and find out that he is phenomenal. And all the traits that irritated us about him when he was a little kid are the very traits that we love now and that make him very, very successful as a young man. So we decided to open up our home. And so the idea was we would invite strong-willed kids and kids with learning disabilities into our house, 10 to 15 at a time. So they were in a group, so they would irritate each other, and we would change plans on them at the last minute. Why? Because your kids can't deal with changes in plans. And we would disappoint them, so they would melt down. Why? So we could teach them in a moment, here's how you control your emotions. Here's what you do with people who are irritating, because you're going to have to learn that use that for the rest of your life. And over the course of a decade, we had about 1,500 of these kids in our home, and we've worked with almost 1 million families now. So I hope what you find is there's a lot of science and research behind this, but my focus tonight is on practical application. So I promised Seth, since he listened to the presentation this morning, and I didn't get to this, a few tips for toddlers and things for little kids. I'll do some toddlers, tweens, teens, and then we'll get into the main thrust of this. For little kids, realize they respond a lot to energy. So controlling your energy is really, really important. And this is for all of us. But when you say no, even matter-of-fact tone, no emotion at all. Always discipline, no emotion. Little kids can tell what mood you're in before you even say anything. By the way you walk into a room, by your first words, they can tell whether you're anxious, whether you're upset. They can feel it. They can pick up on it. And so my no is always No, not happening this afternoon. Nope, it's not the way I roll in my home. But I give the energy to, but here's what I want when I'm leading them. When I transition, I'm always transitioning from, no, we're going to stop that. But here's what I could use your help with. The energy goes to moving them, leading them. Little kids don't always hear you because they're always often caught up in their own little world, which they should be. Look, there's a misnomer here, and I know I'm a little bit I was going to say counterintuitive, but I take a little bit different approach. But I don't think little kids should listen to you or their teachers all the time. They're not made to do that, especially under the age of 5, 6, or 7. They're supposed to be curious. Their job is to make messes, to get into stuff, to make things dirty. And that's hard for us because we want all this order and structure. But their job is to explore, because guess what? For the rest of their lives, they don't get to do that, right? And most of you are unhappy in your job because you don't get to explore and everything is prescribed and it's boring. You want them to be curious. So let them be curious and let them look. At times they're going to tune everything out, right? So sometimes with little kids, to cut through that with them, I use nonverbals. Music is a great way to get little kids moving, right? Whistle while you work. Bet you can't get dressed this morning before your favorite Bob the Builder song is over. Flicking the lights helps. There's for your little kids who are daydreamers, and this is kids of all ages, you can all say something like this. I'll give you a couple of them. Hey, it's really cool what you're doing right now. Why do you like that so much? And ask them, and then transition with some energy to, hey, here's what I need some help with if you want to be a big guy, if you want to be a helper, right? If your kids zone out at times and they're daydreaming, say, you know what? I bet you're somewhere really cool inside your brain right now. Where did you go? Ask them that. Ask what they're daydreaming about, because you will learn so much about what they're curious about. And you can use that to your advantage in so many ways at motivating them. But reach into the brain and say, that's really cool. Hey, do you think you could help me right now with this? And try to move them to a different task, if that makes sense. We'll hit this in a few minutes, but when you get them to stop doing something, whenever you tell a child to stop doing something inappropriate, I want you to give them something appropriate to do. Oh man, we need to stop doing that right now. Oh, but you're really awesome at X. Could you help me with X? Make things a challenge to stimulate their little brains. Maybe you give them a time limit. Do it backwards. Do something blindfolded. Say, hey, bet you can't do this. Look, that works for kids of all ages. I'm volunteering now at an inner city community center. And sometimes when I want to get the kids to do something, I go right to hey, you know what? I was going to ask you to do something, but I don't think you do it. I'm not sure you're big enough, old enough, mature enough to do that. And immediately they're on, well, what is it? What is it? And then I give them a challenge and then they're on it. But if I make it like a chore, they never want to do it. Most of your little kids, or many of your little kids, have sensory needs. They're always seeking sensory pressure. So you'll notice them at times hitting, constantly touching, grabbing someone walking by. Maybe they're being rough with a new baby, right? By the way, if you have that, the new baby comes along, your older child is going to be jealous because of all the attention that the new little annoying baby gets. So make sure that you give them a job to do. Hey, you know what? Your little brother's kind of cool, but man, you're older. You know all kinds of things that he doesn't. I really need your help. And give your child some jobs to do, doing some things that help out, because it makes them feel older. They like to feel more special that way. And you're giving them energy when they're doing that. And make sure you remind the grandparents and the friends who come over, because what do? They head right for the little cute little infant. Make sure they stop, get on a knee and say, man, we've heard that you can build a Lego with like 58 pieces. Can you show that to me? And affirm that, and then go for the little baby. It just helps a little bit. But you'll notice with the sensory kids, they're kind of rough at times. And so I want to proactively meet those needs. So think about little physical activities. I encourage you with kids of just about all ages, maybe not teens, but have toddlers in elementary school for sure. create an obstacle course. An obstacle course in the backyard or the basement. And this does not have to be expensive at all. It can just be anything tubing, anything they crawl under, crawl over, things that they do where they have to press against things, climbing things. And this is not meant to be funny. I would wake your kids up in the morning, especially if they go to school, and say, hey, bet you can't make it through your obstacle course in less than 52 seconds. Hey, guess where I hid your oatmeal or your breakfast or cereal this morning? I hid it out in the obstacle course. Bet you can't find it. And I'm being honest with that. Look, you guys are in Prosper. You have good weather most of the year. Your kids can be outside almost all the time. Why not get them going outside first thing in the morning? The fresh air changes moods. Some of your kids would love to eat breakfast outside away from you and their annoying siblings. And guess what? You get to enjoy breakfast without the most strong-willed, energetic child being right there irritating everybody. Here's one for Seth and all of us is don't make things more difficult than they need to be. Don't be afraid to do things differently. Like we always get this like, well, we want to enjoy family dinner time. Well, I like to do that too. But if you have little kids who are always moving and every night at dinner ends up with dad saying like, Jacob, you need to sit still at the dinner table. We need to enjoy dinner together as a family. Well, you're not going to enjoy dinner that way. So why can't all your little kids eat anyway are mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. So feed them at 4:30, feed them early. Then you and your spouse can enjoy dinner together without having to correct the kids and get on them and make sure that they eat everything, right? And that's your own issue also. Model for your kids what you want them to do. Stop freaking out about everything. So don't make it more difficult. If that works and you feed them early, good. Well, we wanted to have bonding time at dinner. Well, who says that's the only time you can do that? So kids eat early. Mom and dad get to actually eat dinner and enjoy it. And now after dinner, dad and mom now can play with the kids on the floor, which is a better way to bond with them, or go for a walk or play outside. You still get your bonding time, but you're not stuck trying to correct them and them getting in trouble because they can't sit perfectly still. And for the men out there, I am one, who are like, well, they should learn to sit still at the dinner table because we did that when we were kids. Yes, we did. But well, guess what else we did as kids? We got home from school at about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were outside for literally 2 or 3 hours running and playing nonstop and playing games like Kill the Guy. Look, we played games like Kill the Guy with the Ball. And I saw some kids playing this the other day, and it was awesome. You throw a football up in the air. One guy catches it. You fight to catch it, and then guess what happens? 3 or 4 or 5 other guys jump on top of them and tackle them. If you wonder why we didn't have sensory issues as kids, because we were getting those needs met every day by getting pounded by our friends. So by the time we came for dinner, we were exhausted. We weren't moving all over the place because we were physically exhausted and starving. But if your kids come home from school and they're on screens or sitting for another 2 hours after sitting at school for 6 hours, they're probably going to be jumpy at dinner table. So step back sometimes. Don't make things too difficult for yourself. Let them do things in a different way. And we'll get to meltdowns later, but when little kids start to melt down, I want to give them something physical to do, whether it's push-ups, jumping jacks, jumping on a mini trampoline, whatever it is, move to something physical. Some of your kids are very, very physical. So if you give them like a phone book to rip up, or those little dog chew toys, those chew toys that dogs have that are like, what would they call it? It's rope, really thick rope, and it's tightly wound. Give that to your child sometime, not to chew on, unless they have that kind of, unless they'd like that, as long as it's clean, but to play with and to rip and to climb and to do things, because that's how you work off your frustration, is by doing something, not by just talking about it. So I'll leave you with that. I'll try to come back to some more let me do one more for toddlers. Tantrums. Here's the difference, and this is for all of us, but a tantrum is a rational thing that a child does, because you say, no, you can't have those fruit snacks. I'm going to throw a big tantrum and I'm going to be upset and I'm going to scream and yell and throw myself on the floor. And I'm going to do that in the middle of the produce aisle at the grocery store when I don't get my way. That's a tantrum. It is designed, it has one purpose in mind, to wear you down so you give in and give them what they want. That is different from a meltdown. To me, a meltdown is irrational and emotional because something changed and they've got anxiety and something else is going on and they're not fully in control of themselves. A tantrum, though, they're controlling it at first because they just want to wear you down. So my advice for you with tantrums is sit down. In the midst of the next tantrum, just sit down and look at your child and say, look, wear yourself out. I've got 2 rules in my home. First rule is we do everything with excellence. If you are going to have a tantrum, I want you to do it really well. Show me what you got. But my second rule of my home is I don't respond to tantrums. Your behavior does not change my behavior. Your mood does not dictate my mood. You may throw the tantrum. I'm okay with you having a tantrum. I just want you to know this. It will never, ever, ever work with me. It's not how I roll. I'm not going to give into it. Even if we're in public, I'm not going to get embarrassed. You can roll around in aisle 3 at the grocery store because I wouldn't give you the fruit snacks. I'm completely fine with that. It doesn't bother me. The only thing that bothers me is when I'm rolling around throwing a tantrum in aisle 3 at the grocery store because you won't listen. But if you want it, go for it. And I don't give them any energy, but what I transition to is, hey, I know what you want. My answer right now, not going to happen. But I bet we could problem solve. I bet we could come up with a way for you to earn those new video games, that new whatever you want, those new toys. If you talk to me like an adult, I'm all ears. But if you're going to, if you yell, scream, threaten me, if you try to manipulate, what are my other words here? Because it's not really threaten at age 3. It's not really that threatening usually. But if you try to, if you're demanding, right? And you sort of, I don't hear it. It's just not going to work with me ever. I just encourage you to have that tone of voice. It is exhausting, but here's what kids finally figure out. Every time I do that, my parents don't give in to me. That's not working. But when I do go and talk to them like an adult, that sometimes works, right? So I just encourage you, your toddlers will grow out of a lot of those things and probably into worse things. But just know that it will pass and just hang in there. With tweens and teens, I'm going to save this, but what we will get to, if you want to write the words down, are mission and mentor. We will get into giving them a larger mission in life, a larger purpose in life, and a mentor that holds them accountable, because that is the key to getting them internally motivated when they get older. So let's go here. Let's start talking about strong-willed kids and how we can get them to be responsible for themselves. Casey, if you will write down in the chat section that phrase, a couple phrases, please. I believe you're capable. And write down, when we step back as parents, it gives our kids space to step up. If you could write those, because that'll help me remember. And it's a nice little notes for the parents joining in. So, okay. So let's talk about strong-willed kids. I kind of alluded to this. What I want to give strong-willed kids, and the reason that they will not do it your way, and that's a good thing, is they want to do it their way. And this is going to irritate you because you're the authority figure in the home, but I just want you to hear me out on this. I do not want to give them control of my home, control of my classroom, but I do want to give kids what we would call ownership. Casey, write it in all caps, ownership. I want to give them ownership. When we were kids, we had a lot of ownership of our lives. We got home from school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, out for 2 hours playing. In the summertime, our parents didn't even see us. We were gone literally days at a time, and our parents didn't even know what we did. I don't even really remember my parents asking me what we did. We were just home. We got home for dinner, and as long as we weren't dead and didn't cause any major fires in the neighborhood or something bad, everything was cool. The point is, we were making dozens of decisions a day, and there were no adults around. Think about your kid's life. From the time they wake up in the morning till the time they go to bed, there's an adult telling your child what to do and how to do and when to do it. There's a parent on them all the time. We grew up playing sports in the neighborhood. It was just some guys Gals got together and we made up our own rules and we made up our games and we came up with hybrid games. We had a game called hockey soccer. So you could play soccer, but you were allowed to check people because we were very physical kids. And we played games and we figured it out ourselves. We got in fights with our friends, and guess what? We made up ourselves. Our mommies and daddies didn't call everybody. And I understand why you have to do that nowadays, but sometimes it's really counterproductive what we do. Our kids start soccer practice when they're 4 years old. It's useless. They just run around in a little circle. They'd be better off having a mom or dad in the neighborhood just getting a soccer ball out and drawing some kids to you and letting them just play by themselves, because then they figure out they learn so much by playing. And so the point is, your kids don't have a lot of ownership of their lives, which, by the way, is one reason that they get on their screens, because they know that you hate screens and you don't get on their screens and their video games with them. It's something that's theirs and theirs alone. So I want to give kids ownership, and here's kind of how we define it. Picture this box, and this is kind of like a little box, and I want my kids, I give them this box to live in life, and I want to create a large box, and I say this, guys, here is the box that you get to live in. It's a big box, but it's got very clear boundaries. I've got very clear expectations of what I expect of you in life. It's very, very clear. But within this big box, I will give you some space, and write down the word space. It is critical for your kids. I will give you space to do things and do them differently than I would do them, as long as we accomplish the same task. Does that make sense? I'm not saying, oh, if you want to do your schoolwork, oh no, schoolwork's getting done. I just don't care how you get it done. So let me give you a few examples in here. Let me do a space one first. When you correct your child's schoolwork or homework, instead of saying, come on, sit down at the table. We need to go through because you clearly didn't get this. And I'm going to show all the things that you did wrong. And I'm going to stand over you waiting for you to fix it. And then you're going to dawdle like you don't know how to do it. And I'm going to get frustrated because if you would just do it, you would be done very quickly, but you're wasting our time. And now everybody's frustrated. But what if you were to pull out their schoolwork and say, hey, listen, nice job on the math worksheet. Listen, I circled number 4, number 9, number 16, number 23. Listen, I've got to go get started on dinner, on laundry. If you need some help in a little bit, come grab me. I'll be glad to help you. And the reason I like it is because I am pointing out what needs to be worked on, but then I'm removing myself. And this is really important for the strong-willed child. If you stand over them, they will resist you all day long. It is the way they're wired, the way they are made. It is the way they are. So when I point that out and I remove myself, I give them a little space to do the, oh, this is stupid, I only like my math homework, but I'm not listening to them because I went off to do a different task. And I gave them some space and I gave myself space. And when I come back in the room, and this is key for meltdowns and just about everything, from toddler age through teens, is to be able to manage space a little bit. Because I guarantee you, those of you who have older kids, even 3rd grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, and this is not meant to be mean, and there's no blame and guilt in what we do, but I guarantee you most of the power struggles, or a lot of the power struggles come from the fact that you just don't leave them alone, and you're on them all the time, and you just keep talking. They're like, okay, mom, got it. And you're like, no, you don't got it. And you keep going and going, and it provokes them to anger. And sometimes you just need to let it rest a little bit and create some space so they can let stuff sink in. And I always like to use this analogy when we're at live events, especially because it's easier when you can see people and their reactions. But, you know, what if I were to come to think about this. What if I were to come to your house and walk around behind you every day for like 24 hours and just point out everything that you did wrong or everything you didn't do to the best of your ability? You would hate me and you wouldn't feel affirmed. You wouldn't feel motivated. But that's kind of the pattern that we've gotten stuck in with our kids, is we're so over involved that we notice everything they do wrong. So there's a lecture for everything and it's suffocating. And so one of my main things, Casey, write this down, is I want you for the next week, affirm your child, affirm for what they're doing well. Affirm what they are doing well instead of pointing out what they're not doing well. You're gonna be like, well, but I need to point out, they already know what they're not doing well. And I'm trying, Look, I'm trying to help you with a strong-willed child. If you go in and point out everything they're not doing well, they're going to say, screw it, screw you. It's just, sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful in that. I'm just telling you what's inside. But if for the next few days you just affirm and say, hey, you did a really good job on that. I'm really proud of you. COVID time's kind of tough, but you're managing this really well, and I appreciate that. And then just walk away. Or, hey, you did a really good job on that project the other day. Did they do as good of a job as you would have done? Probably not. And that could be because you're just a very conscientious person, or because you're 43 and they're an 8th grade boy. And I'll tell you, 8th grade boys are not usually very conscientious. They're just not at that age. And you have to resist being on them all the time, or they will shut down. So I encourage you, give some space, give some time, because otherwise it will ratchet things up. So ownership, let's go through a couple ideas here. I did this one this morning. So there's a, I'm just going to read this from Casey because I think it's a question. Oh, can I read, if you don't mind, I'm going to just do this one right now because it's interesting to me. My son's always putting himself in danger, running into the street during our walk, climbing high things and jumping off, irritating the cat, getting scratched. He has no regard for his own safety, no matter how I try to teach him, and he's age 4. Good. So good for you for observing that. And so there's a couple ways to respond to that. One would be to get very defensive and be like, well, I have to stop. I really need to reel him in. And I need to talk to him constantly about the need for safety and for impulse control. And all of those things are the natural thing that you're going to want to do. But if it's okay with you, since you're Texas people, I will be a little bit more direct with you and say, most of your parent lectures just don't work, and they mean nothing. They're literally just words, and they don't mean anything. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but look, you've probably been talking to him about all these things since he was probably 2 when he started jumping off the roof. And you can try to get him to stop doing all of those things, right? Which is a noble goal because we don't want him to die. But what I hear is, okay, so I've got a child, he's putting himself in danger. That's the way we see it. He doesn't see it as that. He sees it as a challenge. He has a natural longing, desire to push the limits. You are not going to take that out of him. You're not. It's in there. So I don't go to the extremes. Well, I guess he's just probably going to die when he's 6. I don't say that either. But if you don't give him appropriate ways for him to get that brain stimulation and that challenge, he will continue to seek tougher and tougher, more challenging things to do. So I begin to think of, well, one is when we're going for a walk and he runs into the street and said, no, don't do that, don't do that. Focus his brain while you're going for a walk on what he can do. Ask him, see if he can hop on one foot for 7 steps and do the next one for 9, because that makes him concentrate. Maybe he has to walk or hop or run backwards. Maybe he has to walk on his hands, or maybe he walks on a mix of his hands or feet, or he does it in some odd way while he's throwing a ball up in the air. Begin doing this because, listen, this is going to be exhausting for you. This child has an extraordinary amount of energy. He likes climbing high things and jumping off. So I would begin to think of, and this is where you may have to brainstorm with your spouse about this, is what are some things that we can give him? What are some things that we can create in the backyard where he gets the thrill of jumping onto it and jumping off of something, but that we make it pretty safe, right? Because otherwise you're going to find him one day up on the roof and he's not going to think anything of it. It's not even a moral issue and he's not misbehaving. He's driven by this need that he already feels. He loves, by the way, I would look up and see an occupational therapist. Casey, write that down, OT. Occupational therapist is going to be really, really helpful for your child because he is a sensory seeking child. So I want him in the morning. I would do this. I would one have the obstacle course. I would also probably build a climbing wall on the side of your house if it's allowed in your HOA, or in the basement with lots of mats. And I would probably get him involved in different martial arts, in swimming, in things that give him a lot of contact and physical contact, because it is very settling for his body. And I would look up all kinds of sensory issues. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just his body. Look, at age 4, this is what's awesome. He is already telling you what he needs in life. You are going to be exhausted by this child, but he is going to want to be the skateboarding kid or the kid who does tricks. And he may have a very high tolerance for pain. I would make sure that I have very good insurance, because he may break some bones. But you can't live fearfully, but I also don't want him jumping off the roof. But I want to find some opportunities for him to do some things where he comes alive during these things, and it meets him. When we're doing homework with him, as he gets to homework, not at age 4 or 5 or 6, hopefully, or even 7, but later on when he's doing homework, I want to be playing catch with him while we're reviewing vocabulary words. And I want him jumping on the trampoline while we're reviewing vocabulary words and doing his math tables, not sitting. This kid's probably not going to sit down, which is fine. We can work with that. But just begin to work with that and notice what feels good to him. I would teach hubby to do some wrestling with him, as long as they don't end up fighting each other and getting upset. Physical pressure is going to feel really good. My hunch tells me he will probably do better work sitting underneath his desk at school, because he likes the confined space and the pressure that comes with that. He may do better work sitting up against a wall. Work with it, work with it, work with it. It's a cool thing. So, and that's a perfect example actually of ownership. I'm not giving him control. Hey, jump off whatever you want. But within this box, this is actually a perfect example. What you will want to do is create a small little box and say, do not do these things because it's very dangerous. Instead, I want to create a big box and say, you know what? I love that impulse that you have. I love that you're a go-getter. I love that you don't have fear, because I don't want to raise a fearful child. I want to raise a child who has some wisdom, right? But I want to create a big box and say, we're going to give you opportunities to explore this nature that you have and to use it to our advantage and your advantage within our boundaries, within this big box. You're going to give him space. You're going to have to raise him differently than you're going to have to raise the child who just sits perfectly still and does everything that you want them to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with this 4-year-old. And if you don't mind, I'll riff on this for a minute. He's going to struggle in school. Can you imagine him going into preschool and sitting perfectly still and following directions all day? He's going to be bored to tears. And there's nothing wrong. The teachers, look, I like to say, his teachers aren't doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. And he's not doing anything wrong. It's just that you have to do things differently. And if I see that kid come into my classroom, man, I'm going to have to give him some things to do. And I'm going to have to challenge his brain. And he's probably not going to sit perfectly still. But I can let him stand on his head in the back of the classroom, because he'll probably listen better that way. And when he gets a little bit antsy in my class, here's one of the tools we give kids when I get later to the tools section. We did this with some teachers. So I know there are a certain number of your kids of all ages who just need to move, and they like physical pressure. So I had these teachers, and they were obviously having a difficult time with these kids. So I was like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to get 2 backpacks, a red backpack and a blue backpack, and we're going to fill them with books or rocks. I don't care. Make them heavy. And we'll have them in the back, one in the back of the classroom, Mrs. Henderson, and Miss Collins is going to have the red one in her classroom. So when this little guy who's 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10, however old your child is, starts getting antsy or starts kind of squirming a lot, instead of just correcting him all the time and him getting in trouble and losing recess, I'm going to say, oh, Jacob, I need your help. Blue backpack. And we have it pre-established. His job is to go to the back of the room, put that backpack over his shoulders, which is really good, Really good for meeting sensory needs. It is very calming and settling. By the way, when you work on the large muscle groups, it helps with fine motor skills and the writing process. That's why sweeping in class is so good. Cleaning desks is really good because you're crossing the midline of the brain and the body. It's really helpful for the brain process. If you struggle with any of that stuff, listen. We've got a program. It's called ADHD University. Listen to it. It's phenomenal. It will save you tons of money on therapy and testing because we can tell you what to do with all of this stuff. There's nothing wrong with your child's brains. There's nothing wrong with them. Their brains are just different. And if we learn how to use them and teach our kids that their brains are good and there's nothing wrong with them, man, they can be super successful. So, hey, Casey, you might be unmuted. I hear some typing, and I'm not sure whose that is, but I don't know if that's me doing it, but just check. It's slightly annoying to me.
That was me. I'm sorry.
See, why can't you follow directions? It says to mute yourself. Isn't that what we do to our kids, right? We do it all the time. Instead of me telling him, Casey, you're being really helpful by putting these notes in the chat section, we're like, why didn't you listen? That was embarrassing. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I think I've exhausted that with the 4-year-old, but we're going to give him some different tools to use. Oh, it was take the blue backpack. Sorry about that. Take the blue backpack to Mrs. Collins' class, and then when he walks in that classroom, she's going to, oh, good, thank you. Can you take the red backpack back to your classroom? I just gave the child about, I don't know, 43 seconds to move. But he got to carry 2 things that were heavy. It's settling, it's comforting, and I gave him a job to do. And now 2 teachers were able to say, oh, good job, thank you, rather than, I don't know why you can't sit still. Does that make sense? I want to constantly create, if you want to write this down for younger kids and older kids, create wins, create successes. I always want to be creating successes. So ownership, here's a good example. So mom, and this can be slightly older even, son has told his mom, hey, I want to get good at golf because I want to make the high school golf team. Good. So mom, being a good mom, spends some money, gets some lessons. They go out to the golf course. This is not cheap. And son is practicing and hitting the ball, but he's slicing. Ball's going off to the right. And so mom, as a good mom, says, hey, son, I've noticed your hips and shoulders are not parallel, and you're off a little bit, and the son says, okay, mom, got it. She's like, no, I need to show you this because, you're slicing, and if you would just do, and he's like, mom, I've got it, no. You know what, son, if you don't got it, because if you did have it, you wouldn't be slicing. Let me show, mom, I don't need your, listen, son, I am paying a lot of money for this, and I'm not going to waste the time. And you've told me that you want to make that. And here comes the big speech, right? You've told me that you want to make the high school golf team. And if you're not going to listen to me, you're not going to do it. And it's wasted breath and wasted time. And by the end of it, he's like, fine, you know what, mom? I don't want to do it anymore. I quit. You're not going to quit because I paid in advance for 14 lessons and it cost me $8,000. And now it's a big fight and everybody's miserable. But imagine, remember the space word. Imagine that mom mentions like, hey, hips and shoulders, and the son's like, okay, got it, mom. Mom goes over, takes some time, and she works on her short game, and she putts on a putting green. Or maybe she goes into the golf clubhouse and has a drink or 4. Kidding. But I don't care. I'd rather you be in the clubhouse having a drink, not getting drunk, having a drink, than lecturing and badgering your child. It's much better use of your time. So I'm not advocating drinking, but 1 drink is okay unless you have trouble with that. So, you know what I say mean in context. So now, 30 minutes later, mom, after putting on the putting green, comes over, and now watch what her son's going to say. Mom, come here. Let me show you. Look, mom, I figured it out. Now, is he doing it perfectly? No. Is he maybe hitting the way he should be? No. But he worked on it himself. He figured it out, and he's doing better. And instead of being all over him, and I know what mom will be thinking, well, if you just would have listened to me, I could have shown you that in a more easy, quicker way. It's not the point. It's not the way they want to do it. And now mom comes back and she gets to affirm and say, you know what I admire about you? By the way, I love this phrase. You know what I admire about you? I admire that you have the persistence when you really want to learn something to figure it out on your own. Because watch, you know what it usually is? Why won't you ever listen to anybody? Your kids aren't going to listen to people. They're going to figure stuff out on their own. It's the way they're made. And that's a great quality to have. It's just irritating when they're your child. But that phrase, I encourage you to use at times. You know, if you've been fighting your child since the day they were born, tomorrow morning when they wake up or when you get off of this webinar, maybe go in their room and say, you know what? I wish I was more like you. I wish I was more like you because you're really assertive. And I always know where you stand because you tell me exactly what you want. And I wish I was a little bit more confident like that. Affirm them for what they're doing. I'll give you one more in a totally different way. Affirm your child. Some of you have kids who struggle with anxiety and even severe anxiety. And I've had a lot of people we work with and their daughters have very severe anxiety. And that makes sense in this society and with social media. And they struggle to go to school. And we're on them all the time. I don't know why you can't go to school. I never miss school. You're so smart, blah, blah, blah. And instead, one morning, if you were to write a note or to say on the way to school, hey, honey, you know what? You know what I realized? I bet that no one has any idea how much courage it takes for you to get up and go to school sometimes. And I just want you to know I'm proud of you. If you think that won't reach down into your child's heart and motivate them to fight even harder, man, that's how I want you to do it for the next week, to reach down in there. Virtually nobody responds to negativity, including you. You would not keep working at your place of employment unless you were desperate, if your boss just constantly told you what you were doing wrong. You want to work harder for your boss, I guarantee you, because your boss said, hey, that last project, you killed it. And I really appreciate the extra effort you spent on that project. That makes you want to work harder. So let's not think that it works differently with our kids, right? So the ownership piece, let me do one or two other ones and then we'll move on to behavior. So one of our favorite examples for getting your kids moving in the morning. Oh, by the way, let me give you these two little quickies. Younger kids, wake them up in the morning. Don't talk to your kids about school first thing. Guys, ready to go to school, ready to go to that place where you're on red on the behavior chart, right? You don't have any friends and it's a struggle. No, right? That's not motivating in the morning. Kids, treasure hunt. Little kids, hey, hit something in the backyard, but you can't find it next 12 and a half minutes before breakfast is ready. All kids love treasure hunts. Get them up and moving, doing something. Use the obstacle course. Older kids, I want you to connect with your older kids over something that's interesting to them. Here's the hard part. What is interesting to your child, teenager, is probably annoying to you. Their music, you're going to hate. You know what that means? You're old. Now you're old and you've become your parent because your parents probably hated your music. It's just the way that it works. So be curious about it. So wake them up, and you will hate this, but say, hey, if you get up, get dressed, get downstairs in the next 12 and a half minutes, you can show me 2 TikTok videos and I'll watch them. I'll even fake like I'm interested and think they're cool. Don't say that part. But bond with them over their music. Like even if it's rap music and you hate rap music, be curious with your kids. So I'm curious. I don't really understand everything in this, but I'm curious. What is it about this music that you like so much? And listen to them, because I guarantee you're going to learn something. And I guarantee you, when you enter into things instead of fearing them all the time, it gives you a better chance to change your child's behavior. Just try it sometime. It's interesting. So here's what I say in the morning. Hey, son, I have one goal for you in the morning. I want you in the car or on that school bus at 7:21 a.m. 7:21 a.m. One goal. School bus, car, 7:21. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you smell like. I don't care what's in your stomach. If you're smart enough to wear the clothes to bed that you're going to wear to school the next day, you can sleep in till 7:19. Roll out of bed, grab that Pop-Tart that you hid under your bed because I know you hoard food up there. You can run out to the school bus. You don't even have to have your shoes on because we live in Texas, not Canada. You're not going to die. And if they make that school bus by 7:21, your appropriate response is fist bump. Nice job making the school bus, my friend. Now, what are you thinking inside? I hate the way they get ready. I want my child to get up early, and I want them to eat blueberries and avocado and have good, healthy fat and antioxidants so their brain's ready to learn. And I want all those things, but your lecturing never makes it happen, does it? When was the last time your child said, Mom, I didn't realize that what I was putting in my body was so unhealthy? But after you lectured me for the 14th time and showed me the food pyramid, which is all wrong anyway, I'm motivated to eat healthy. I guarantee you, the more you press your kids, the more you lecture, the more you try to change them, the more they will resist. Is that not true? If you tell them, get to the car, go to the car, go, 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 the more quickly you try to get them to move, the more slowly they go. They're not rejecting you. This is important. They're rejecting your anxiety. I believe our greatest enemy as a parent, enemies as parents, are our control issues and our anxiety. Let me hit these really quickly. You and I have control issues. We want things done a certain way. It's fine because I'm 54. I know the most effective and efficient way to do it is do A, B, and C. You need to do it A, B, and C. It's the best way to do it. We don't have time for all of your other stuff. We overschedule you. Let's go and move. That's my natural parenting mode. But I have a lot of control issues. You probably have control issues. And we have established a strong-willed child is not going to do things the way you want them done, and their way is going to irritate you. But if I could be honest with you, your way is not the only way to do it. And your way is not always the right way to do it. It may be the most efficient way to do it right now, but it doesn't mean it's the right way for them to do it. And so I encourage you, spend some time working out your own perfectionism, your own control issues, or you're causing most of the power struggles. You are. And the great part of that is there's no blame or no guilt. It is this. There's only one person in life that I can control. It's myself. And if I learn to control myself, I guarantee you the quickest way to change your child's behavior is to first control your own behavior. And if you can step back, there's that phrase, Casey wrote it down. When we step back as parents, it gives our kids space to step up and be responsible for themselves. When we step back from lecturing, micromanaging, we micromanage them all the time, from fixing everything. Stop fixing everything for your kids. You know what our parents did for us? They weren't involved in everything. Now, some of it was because they were neglectful, and some of us had alcoholic parents. So I get that. But some of what they were saying is, I believe you're capable. I'm not going to figure everything out for you. I'm not going to show you everything. I'm going to model it for you. I'm going to live my life. But I believe that you are capable of fixing things on your own. You are capable of figuring it out. You are capable of wrestling with things. And it's going to be difficult, and you're going to stress over it a little bit. But that's good because then you'll become resilient. You'll become a problem solver. I think we owe it to our kids to allow them the same space to figure some things out. I know, but you know what? I wasn't going to say this. I believe that we cause our kids a lot of anxiety. Well, you need to make sure that you do really well in that test, and you need to be really conscious. You need to study for that test because it's really important. And it's a test they're taking in 7th grade. That test they're taking in 7th grade has literally no bearing on their entire life. It doesn't. And I'll tell you this, that big test that they're taking in their junior year, it doesn't really matter. Now, does it matter? Could it cause them to fail the grade and take it over? Or maybe sure. But it doesn't mean it's going to ruin their whole life because the truth is maybe they wanted to fail. Maybe they wanted to take a harder path. I'm just saying we create a lot of anxiety because we make such a big deal out of everything. And I encourage you, moms and dads, you're very engaged parents. You're very bright parents. You're listening to a parenting webinar. It means you're a good parent. But sometimes you're too good of a parent in the sense that you're too overly conscientious. And sometimes you get so wrapped up in your kids' things like, oh, we have to do that. Well, no, you really don't. And so it creates all this anxiety in our kids. Look, we didn't have that anxiety. I don't remember having such a big thing over like honors classes and doing this and doing that. We just kind of ran around and we got good grades and we did our work, but it wasn't pressure from a young age. It's almost like we're trying to make them professionals and we're robbing. Let me say this. Some of us are robbing our kids of their childhood. They have the rest of their lives to be miserable like us. They do. Why does everything have to matter so much? Try your hardest. That's a misnomer. That's a lie. You don't have to try your hardest at everything, nor should you. Moms and dads watching this, today, you did not try your hardest at everything. You used wisdom and made good judgments and said, I need to do my best at that task, but that one, not so much because it's just not that important. See, that's wisdom. But with our kids, we're like, no, you need to do everything to the best of your ability. No, you don't. That's a very false standard and a horrible standard to set for your child. Because if you want them to burn out and to not be able to judge between what is important and what is not important, then keep doing that. But you'll create a stressed out child who's worrying about things that literally don't matter at all. And part of being mature is even teaching your child at times, no, that class, if you have to choose, that one's not as important. But reading, writing, arithmetic, oh no, I want you to do really well. I want you to be a good writer, and I need to be able to express yourself in writing, and you need to learn math or science or whatever. But that social studies class, no knock on it. I'm a history geek. But when you're a kid, maybe you don't have to do as much on that, or a certain project. I'll leave it at that. You use your own wisdom in that, but please step back a little bit, control your own anxiety. And I'll say it this way. Here's what happens. Your child isn't living up to their potential, and so you start to project into the future, and you think, well, what's this 4-year-old or 6-year-old or 12-year-old or 16-year-old? Who's going to marry them? Who's going to hire them? How are they going to do well in life? Because they're not putting in their maximum effort. They're just doing the barely necessary amount of work to get by. And you're going to lecture and lecture, and what's going to happen? They will do the opposite of what you want. They will resist you, and they will fight you, and you will ruin their relationship with them. And that's because of your own anxiety. Control your own anxiety. Your kids are going to be fine because they're growing up in a good home. Model it for them. A mom asked last night, well, how can I get my kids to be grateful, and how can I get them to be kind? Well, be kind and be grateful yourself. Let them see how you live your life. When someone wants to cut in front of you in traffic or the post office, let them cut in front. Be gracious to people. Let them see it. Are you being gracious and kind toward people who have a different political opinion than you? Because they're hearing that. They hear it. And so if you're not being gracious and kind and judging and you're judging the motives of people you don't even know, right? Like your lectures don't matter. Your actions do, right? And so there's no blame and guilt in that. It's just that you have a tremendous amount of power by doing what you do. Let me hit on this one thing too. So this came up in a podcast I just did this past week. It's one of my favorite podcasts. It's really, really good. So look up on the Calm Parenting podcast. But the parents were talking about sibling issues and that the siblings are picking on each other and can't get along. And you know what hit me? I guarantee you in most of our homes, again, no blame, no guilt, it's just the way it is. The two adults in the home can't even get along, right? And we want our kids, be kind to each other, work out your problems together. And I guarantee you, half of the parents listening to this have not had a very difficult discussion. You haven't had a difficult discussion with your spouse, possibly in years. You know what? Because wives, you brought something up hard to your husband and he ended up dismissing you. And that hurt. And every time you bring it up, he dismisses you. Or when he brings something up, maybe you react to it and you get emotional. Or he gets emotional. We all get emotional and then we check out. So we just stop talking to each other. And so what happens is you start building up resentments. And so watch how this happens. We want our kids to do things that we're not even capable of. Is that not true? You've got resentments built up for the last 3, 4, 5, 7, 14 years over things, and you can't bring up something to your spouse because you're afraid of how he or she is going to react. That doesn't work. That will eventually blow up on you, and it will not work with your kids. And so I encourage you, whether you go to marriage therapy, whatever it is, work on yourselves. If you want to change your child's behavior, work on your marriage. Nobody wants to do it. We have this program. It's called the Calm Couples Program, marriage mentoring program that I do. I've made this thing so inexpensive because nobody wants to work on their marriage, and you can do it right from your own home. You don't have to spend money on therapy. It's way cheaper than therapy, and you can work on it from your own home. You can work on it by yourself and learn relationship skills. It is phenomenal. I did it for men because men don't like marriage therapy because it feels like the therapist and our wife is teaming up on us. So I mean, it's so cheap. We have a special on. There's a thing on our website called the Calm Parenting Package. We're doing a fall clearance sale, and you get the marriage program as part of that for less than the price of going to one therapy appointment. You get like 30 hours worth of materials. So I encourage you, look that up. It won't only just change your child's behavior, could save your marriage, which will save you literally tens of thousands of dollars on divorce and splitting up your assets. So up to you what you do, but work on it and don't dismiss that. Because here's my question. If the two adults, if you and your spouse can't work on problems together, how are you going to expect two siblings to do who are 4 and 6 and 14? So controlling yourselves is critically important with this. And I want to give kids ownership of their behavior. So the 721 example, I don't care what you wear to school. If you want to do this, eventually they will eat healthy food because you eat healthy food. And because every day in third period, their stomach hurts. And because it hurts their stomach, they will start getting up and fixing their own breakfast. Many of your kids, by the way, will cook, and I would have them cook for you. Just know they're not going to follow the recipe, and they're not going to clean up well. And just know that that's the way it works. By the way, Seth, if you're still there, for toddlers, strong-willed toddlers who get like a vision for what they want to do, they will dump 1.5 million toys out on the floor, but they're not picking them all up by themselves. And you're going to say, like, well, but if they don't learn how to pick up their toys when they're 4 and they're 6, how are they going to be responsible in a job one day? It doesn't work that way. You're projecting into the future. Just know your toddler is not going to pick up all of those toys by himself. You are going to find yourself down on your hands and knees, grumbling and complaining because you're picking up the mess that he made. Why? I work with 1 million families. It's just the way it works with some of our kids, right? Conscientious kids will pick up everything and they'll be great. They're going to grow up and be awesome adults, but they'll need therapy because they're people pleasers, and they end up with a lot of resentment in life because they do everything for everybody else and everybody takes advantage of them. Moms, dads, how many of you are like that now? That's you. So you get to break that generational pattern. So let's go through this. So I want to give kids some ownership. Let me do this question. We have a question on, hold on, give me just a second. Tools for schoolwork. That's what I forgot. So schoolwork. Let's do homework in some weird ways and different ways. I'm going to throw out a ton of ideas. Experiment with them. So you have a child who hangs upside down off the sofa because it meets a vestibular need and he has sensory needs. Walk into the living room, give him a math worksheet and say, "Bet you can't do your math worksheet sitting upside down." Some kids need to listen to music, really intense music. Try some intense music. Let them do their homework. Some kids need to stand at the kitchen counter, listening to music, chewing on a snack where they can move back and forth doing their schoolwork. Experiment with it. Put a blanket over the kitchen table. You now have a fort. Forts are fun. Child does his schoolwork underneath the kitchen table. Why? Because you can't go underneath the table. And because it's dark under there, dark is fun. Now they get to do their homework using a flashlight. Flashlights are always fun. Make learning fun again, right? If they don't have a flashlight, give them some matches. They'll figure it out. I'm kidding. And they'll eat the chicken nuggets and mac and cheese that fell off the table from the night before. We want to jumpstart the child's brain. I want to do homework in different places, in different ways. I have a weird idea that I want you to do with some of your kids. Try it. Let them do their homework or their schoolwork sitting in the car. Maybe you pick them up from school, or you pick them up from the Taekwondo class or whatever it is, daycare, and you come home and say, "Hey, if you want, you can sit out here by yourself and do your schoolwork out here." I have a lot of kids who do that. You know why? It's their own place. It's safe out there. It's like their own little confined place. It's kind of cool. It's different. It's weird. They can roll the windows down, get the fresh air coming in. They can listen to music. Try it sometime. Don't be afraid to try different things. I would encourage you during homework time, do it outside. We already mentioned reviewing vocabulary words and math facts while the kids are jumping on a trampoline, while you're playing catch, while you're shooting baskets. I'm doing at the little inner city community center where I'm volunteering. I'm doing so much of the learning while we are moving. I bring tennis balls in. This is interesting. So I bring tennis balls in. I just hand them out to the kids. Don't give them any directions. And you see, watch this, one little boy, AJ, is doing a Zoom class because they're doing all virtual learning for the most part. And I notice the tennis ball is under his foot. And he's rolling that tennis ball back and forth. It's not making any noise. And he's rolling it underneath his foot. He doesn't know brain science, but what he knows is when I'm moving something under my foot in that kind of rhythm, it actually helps my brain work better and helps me pay attention. So don't be afraid to do things in different ways. Learn to manage your child's energy, not their time. It is not about time management. It is about using their brain energy and how their brains work best. Some of your kids work best in spurts. They work by momentum. I get a success first. Do not do the hardest job first. Do the easiest one first so that you can get momentum, because momentum breeds success and success breeds success, and it just helps to do that. let's talk about, let me do a question because it helps break it up for me a little bit in talking. I'm an introvert. Talking for 2 hours straight is it's hard for me. So my son has extremely low frustration tolerance. So do most of us as parents. Then add that to ADHD, anxiety can make a lot of situations extremely difficult. Any sort of advice on dealing with this? Okay, extreme low frustration tolerance, add that to ADHD, anxiety. Okay, so here's a couple things. Wherever your child goes, because he struggles with anxiety, new experiences are going to be tough. By the way, if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of roll with questions and go what's in my mind. If I don't know if you're even watching, if you can see, I've got my eyes closed now. I often think best when I close my eyes or when I'm looking up or away. And so that's why I don't do a lot of eye contact with kids, and I allow them to do things in different ways. Sorry if my hair's all messed up. Sorry. Um, ah, this COVID world's weird doing Zoom thingies online. Um, so let's do a couple things here. For anxiety, wherever he goes, I would ask the adult, a teacher, Taekwondo teacher, swim class instructor, a principal, assistant principal, to give him a specific job to do wherever he goes. I would start with, if you want to rate the phrase, begin with a win. I begin every day with a win with him. If I'm taking him someplace, I'm going to play to his strengths and say, oh, when we get there, do you think you could help me with X? Or let's have him, let me give you this example. So you've got a child who struggles with anxiety, and you say, hey, next week, do you want to do Taekwondo class? And he's like, sure, sign me up. Well, next week comes, I'm like, hey, we got to go to Taekwondo. And what do you get? Stomach's kind of upset, right? And he's like, I don't know if I want to go. And you're like, no, if we go right now, we'll stop at McDonald's, we'll get a Happy Meal, everybody will be happy. And what you're going to find out is bribery doesn't work. So you're going to be like, you're going to get your little butt in the car. And you're going to start forcing the child. He's going to be like, I don't want to go to Taekwondo. Taekwondo's stupid. You're stupid. And I hate you. And you're going to hear defiance and disrespect. And you're going to say, I'm the authority figure. You're not going to talk to me like that. So you're going to step into it and you're going to escalate everything. And instead, what I want you to hear is not the defiance and disrespect. I want you to hear anxiety. Anxiety is caused by unknowns, things that you can't control. And so when I said, hey, do you want to go to we've got to go to Taekwondo tonight, what your child hears, what triggers is all the unknowns. Dad, have ever been to Taekwondo? Is the instructor going to be patient with me? Are the kids going to pick on me? What if I'm not good at Taekwondo and I want to quit? Are you going to call me a quitter? And all this anxiety builds up, and he doesn't want to do it. So he lashes out and says, Taekwondo's stupid, you're stupid. Why is he doing that? Because he wants the punishment. Because he's not mature enough to say, mother, father, all the unknowns of this new activity are too much for me and I'm overwhelmed. Could we retire to the den and speak about my anxiety? Like, they don't know to say that. So what they do is they react out of their fear and they start calling you names so that you'll send them to their rooms. Because why? Because if I get sent to my room, I can deal with that. I don't have to eat tonight. I don't need my video games. I would rather sit in my room than go to that new place where I could get rejected by other people and people might not like me and I might fail again. Can you kind of see how that works? I want us to get to the root of things, and I'm going to go through that in greater detail in a minute, but I want to get to the root of it. So in that moment, when the child starts saying, you're stupid, I hate you, how I want to respond, not react, is to step back and say, hey, you know what? If I were you, I'd be a little bit anxious too. It's kind of, is your stomach kind of upset? Yeah, it should be upset, right? Because you're going to a new place. Of course, this is a great phrase. Of course you're anxious. Of course you're overwhelmed, right? Normalize these things. Don't minimize them. Don't dismiss them, but don't make them out to be a bigger deal than they are. I encourage you with this. Use this with wisdom. Some of your kids with anxiety could benefit from some therapy, but some of your kids, it's going to make it worse. To go into a therapist's office every single week and talk about my anxiety and why I have so much anxiety will fill me with so much anxiety that it is counterproductive. What they need is to know what to do with the anxiety and to normalize it. I think one of my big fears in our society is that we are making everything out. We are, I'm not sure, I just lost the word for it, but we're kind of, this isn't the word, but catastrophizing everything with our kids. Well, he's got a lot of anxiety. Well, of course he's got anxiety. There's nothing wrong with anxiety. I have anxiety. I've just learned how to deal with my anxiety. I naturally have anxiety as a person. I like a lot of order and structure and control. That's how I'm made. It's part of, look, I'm very sensitive to emotions and feelings. And so that's a good thing because it means I can be in tune with people, but it also means I'm sensitive to negativity and I take things a little bit too harshly, right? Like everything that we have that's a weakness is also, there's an opposite part of it that's a strength. And so with that child, I'd rather say, of course you're anxious. Your stomach should be a little bit, is your stomach a little bit upset? Because it should be, because you're going to a new place. And going to new places is a little bit nerve-wracking. I get that. See, that's settling to a child, not like, I don't know why you can't go to a 45-minute class, right? It's like with schoolwork. You know, if you would just focus, you would be done. You're so bright. It's not that hard. Watch this, because you know what the child starts to think? Well, if this work isn't that hard, but it's hard for me, maybe I'm just stupid. Well, if my brother goes to this class and it shouldn't be that hard to go to a class, and yet I feel anxious, well, maybe there's really something wrong with me. See how that works? And you begin to feed, see, they feed off of us. And we're beginning to, our society's making them internalize, well, there's something really wrong with you. Now, of course, you've got anxiety. If you don't have anxiety during the COVID time of our lives, then something's wrong with you. You should be experiencing anxiety. Where I want to spend my time is not endlessly talking about it, is giving kids tools to deal with it, to teach them when you go someplace new, do a job, do something for someone. Look, you and I do this all the time. I am not great socially in big groups. So if we get invited to someone's house for a party, I'm like, ugh. So the first thing, and I just did this 2 weeks ago. Here's what it was on a Saturday. You know what I do? I go right out to the grill, right out and say, hey, need any help running the grill? Because I love grilling out. Because I'll flip the burgers, I'll make it. And when I have a job to do, it releases so much of my anxiety. So you know what I did at their house? I'm running the grill. Now I can talk to people. Hey, what do you want on your burger? What kind of cheese you want? How do you want yours done? You want it medium? You want me to burn it? How you want it done? And it gives me context, and I've got my job. It's the first thing I do when I go any places. Is there anything I can do to help? Because when I'm busy, it helps me deal with my anxiety. And so in that moment, when you're about to have a big meltdown, instead you discover some tools to give them for the rest of their lives so they know, yeah, when you go to a new place, always ask for a job to do. Because if we took that kid 3 days ahead of time to Taekwondo place and say, hey, Mr. Taekwondo, my son's going to be in your class. He loves helping other people. Not me, but he loves helping other people, right? Could you give him a job to do? And Taekwondo guy says, hey, Jacob, psyched you're going to be in my class. Listen, I could really use your help. Those are magical words for strong-willed kids. They love being helpful. I could really use your help. Could you get here 5 minutes early every week? You could help me rearrange the mats and set up the cones and get ready for class. Could you do that? And most of your kids to other people say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. So next week I come home, Jacob, Taekwondo, gotta roll. And what triggers in your child's brain? Not all the anxiety. It's mom, dad, remember Mr. Taekwondo said he needed my help. He wants me there 5 minutes early, so we have to leave like 3.5 hours early so we're not late because we have to fight through Prosper or Frisco traffic, and it's really horrible, right? And so when he walks into that Taekwondo class, he's got his job to focus on. Not all the unknowns. He's going to do his job, and that Taekwondo guy's going to be like, hey, fist bump. Nice job, my friend. Every week, 5 minutes early. So I don't know if let me answer it this way as well. So anxiety, ADD, connected situation is difficult. Create the success, give him jobs to do, put him in situations where he is successful. Let me do this on de-escalating. Let's do a thing on meltdowns, right? So this fell under my heading of learning to control yourself, because the quickest way to change your child's behavior is first control yourself. I want you to change that by body posture. Begin sitting down. It is a great body posture. It's very difficult to yell and lecture when you're sitting down. It takes all the steam out of emotional escalating moments. When you're standing, you tend to yell, you get like this. Sit. Just try it. It's really helpful. Sit on the floor, lie on the floor. That will immediately put out the fire of just about any situation. It is almost impossible to yell at your child or get amped up excuse me, while you are laying down on the floor or just lay on the sofa. Look, I guarantee you, for most of you, if you go and you just lie down on the sofa, your kids are gonna be like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I was just gonna lie down on the sofa because this way I don't yell and lecture. So if you want to come lie down with me, I could probably rub your back because you've got sensory needs. And then instead of us fighting for 3 hours, we could problem solve sitting over here. Try that. Tone of voice. I've modeled that. I do it on the podcast. I do it here. Even matter of fact, tone. I do not want any emotion in your voice when you're talking to a strong-willed child because it will escalate. The moment you start talking like this, guys, all I'm asking for is a little bit of help around it. You're done because it just triggers something and then they know that you're needy and you're exhausted. I don't yell, I don't scream because it doesn't work with a strong-willed child because they are fight or flight kids and they can't be intimidated. And it just, once I start getting out of control myself, here's what your kids know. If I just push your buttons, you're going to lose it. And as soon as you lose control, I'm in complete control. I also do not use the really sweet tone with a strong-willed child. Please stop. I didn't mean to say it like that. That sounded kind of jerky. I don't do it anyway. Please stop with the sweetie, baby, mommy needs your help because it sounds like weakness to them. It sounds sweet to you, but it sounds condescending to the strong-willed child. Sweetie, baby, I'm going to talk to you like this because I'm really afraid to give you a direction because every time I tell you to do something, you have a nasty meltdown. So I think if I talk to you in a really sweet tone, see, it's manipulative, is it not? It's a little bit manipulative. I'd rather talk to a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old like they're an adult. Here's what I expect because I know that you're capable of doing it, and I'm going to talk to you like an adult. That is so calming to your kids because what you're communicating is I'm in complete control of myself. So let me do this example. I just encourage you, tone of voice, try it. So let's do this example. One of the bigger triggers for me is when Casey would yell at my wife, right? And that's a big one for men. So let's replay this situation. So I walk into the room, walk into the house, and I hear Casey using a certain attitude, using tone with my wife. Remind me, Casey, to come back to what to do with tone of voice. Remember, write down chips and salsa example, if you don't mind, in the notes, and I'll try to remember this. So anyway, so what do I typically do? Hey, Casey, listen, you are not going to talk to your mother like that. And he's like, just did. And then we would escalate. You know, keep it up, young man, keep it up. You know, you keep using that tone, you're going to lose all your stuff. One more word, young man, which is code for him to say word. And I would do things like, you know what, fine. You know what, you already lost your video games for 1 week. You want to make it 2? And he'd be like, let's make it 4. And they will call your bluff. It is awful. And so I would escalate things. You know, keep it up. You know, just go to your room for the rest of your life. And you know what I realized? And I'm going to just cut right to it for this one. I intentionally provoked my son to anger. You know why? Because I was dependent on him. I needed my son to behave. Watch how this works. What I was really saying to my son was, I need you to behave because if you don't behave and do exactly what I told you to do, I'm not sure I can behave and you do not want to see me angry. Does that make sense? I needed him to behave so that I could behave. And that is a very tricky and bad place to be in life and a bad little toxic interaction you have with your kids. That's why I don't like the screaming and yelling, us getting upset. I will tell you as well, moms, another one is the manipulation we do. After all I do for you. That is a very toxic thing because you know what it is? It's a subtle form of manipulation. Because I've done so much for you, you owe me. We don't want that. We want healthy interactions because otherwise it's going to tumble out of control. And that's why we talk a lot about breaking generational patterns. If you want to know what really gets me excited in this whole parenting field, it is nothing to do with your kids. It is breaking our own generational patterns. You know, this family that I talked to today, the dad, who is a highly competent, very successful, he's in the biotech industry, very competent, very smart guy. His mother struggled with some of these issues, and now his son is. His sister reminds him of his daughter reminds him of his sister. He is playing out his childhood on his 2 children. He is a highly competent, highly paid, He is 49 years old, and yet he is still working out his childhood, but he's doing it, and he's a good man. This is a good man, and you are good parents. We are just the sooner you admit that you are a flawed, broken human being, the quicker you grow into someone who is mature and can handle life. This 49-year-old biotech, he does startups. He is an entrepreneur, and yet he is reliving his childhood and taking all the negative patterns he learned as a kid and now projecting them onto his own family. And if he's not careful, and I'm going to talk to him next week and talk to him about this because he's a good man, he just needs some tools, his kids will grow up, and guess what will happen? They will do the exact same thing to their kids. And generations from now, this pattern will still continue. The big opportunity you have tonight, for the next 3 months, the next year, is not just to learn how to get your kids to behave. It is to break the generational patterns. Mine was fear and intimidation, yelling and screaming from my career military father. That was in our family for generations. I broke that. My brothers broke that, so that now our wives, our kids don't have to manage our emotions for us and walk on eggshells wondering if we're going to freak out. So I encourage you to work on that. So let's look at a different way. Let's look at a different way to handle this situation. So key phrase, and this is kind of answering that last question. It's also just good for all of us who have escalating situations. Write this down, Casey, in all caps. Motion changes emotion. Motion or movement is a tool that we use to help kids calm down. We do way too much talking in our society. Honey, use your words, use your words. And our kids are thinking, you don't want me to use my words because I'll get grounded for those words. It's not always about talking. Honey, do you want to identify your emotions? Right? Think about this. This is a good one for wives out there. Let's say you're just having a bad day, because that happens and life is really hard and you're stressed. What if you came home and you're in a slightly bad mood and your husband's like, honey, do you want to identify your emotions? Your right answer would be like, that would be resentment and hatred towards you right now, right? It's not about always identifying our emotions. Sometimes we're overly therapized, that we do too much kind of therapy talk in our thing. What your child is looking for is not to necessarily identify his emotions. It's for someone to come along and tell him what to do with those emotions. When my son was upset, I always knew it was one of three things. He was either anxious, he was frustrated, and I'll put overwhelmed in there. Look, most of your kids are not defiant. This is not the main term. Well, he's got ODD. Most of your kids do not have ODD. I know they're diagnosed with it. They're not oppositionally defiant children. Sorry, I'm not a therapist, so I can't make that call. Use wisdom. But I want to cut through some of the BS that's in our society. It's not usually ODD. If I had to use one word, it would be frustrated. You have really frustrated kids because they're really bright. They want some ownership. They know the way they want to do things, and their entire childhood, they're put in a system. And this is not the school's fault. It's not the teacher's fault. But the system is arbitrary. Watch what we tell our kids. Or to be successful in life, you've got to have good grades and good behavior. So we're going to put you in this place where you largely have to sit still all day long. And you have to follow directions and learn things that you're not naturally interested in. And then you're going to have to do schoolwork. And after you get home from doing work all day, you're going to have to do more work. And watch, we do that to our kids, but most of us, a lot of us, you don't come home from work and then your spouse is waiting for you saying like, hey, I know you'd worked all day today, honey, but you didn't get a few things done. So let me sit you down at the table and I'm going to stand behind you and then grade your work, right? Like they're kids. And so then you're going to have to memorize information for a timed test, and then you can forget that information. And then you're going to have to line up perfectly still and walk. And then you don't get to talk in class. And then you go to the cafeteria at lunchtime. You don't get to talk there either, right? Like, so we're setting them up for failure basically and saying, look, all the things that you're not good at doing, you have to do them and people are going to grade you on it. Like that's kind of like you, if you're really creative and tomorrow I say, tomorrow your new job is being an accountant. and you've got to fill in all the little ledgers, but you're a really super creative person. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to come along in a week and say, well, how's the job going? Yeah, my performance isn't that great. And I'm going to be like, well, you need to, obviously you just need to work harder and you need to apply yourself because I know that you're bright. So why aren't you doing well as an accountant? Or flip side, what if you're a very orderly person and you're an accountant and I say next week, your new job in your company is not to work in finance. No, you have to go work in the creative side and you have to do all the advertising and marketing. And then I'm going to come back in a couple of weeks and find out that you're failing and that your boss isn't happy with you because I just put you in a situation that you're not naturally good at doing. And then I'm going to measure you for. So, does that make sense? And many of our kids aren't naturally good at just being well behaved because they're leaders and they have a lot of energy. This little 4-year-old that likes jumping off of high things, listen, it's going to be tough for him in school for a while because he doesn't get to jump off of things. He's going to get in trouble for everything that he naturally enjoys doing. He's going to get in trouble. And so part of what you're going to have to do is walk this fine line so your kids, you give them tools so they don't get their spirits crushed. But I really want you to step back with your kids and realize a lot of this stuff that we're doing is very arbitrary with them. So I have no idea where I was except motion changes emotion. And I'm not going to overly talk about everything because I just need to know this is what, I know where I was. Forgive me for that, but it's just a better presentation when I can roll with things. So we established that your kids aren't always just being defiant. Sometimes it's anxiety, and usually they're frustrated. So my son's things were anxiety, frustration, or when he was hungry. Those are his 3 triggers in life. So I didn't have to do, so when he came at me with an attitude, this is where the chips and salsa comes in. I say, Casey, listen, the last 48 times I've heard you use that tone of voice with me, it was usually because you were anxious about something, frustrated, or you're hungry. So listen, why don't you grab some chips? I'll grab some salsa. I'll meet you out on the deck and I'll help you with whatever you're struggling with. So I'm not letting him get away with that. I'm letting him know you can talk to me in that attitude. You can use attitude with me and you can yell at me and you can roll your eyes if you want. But I just want you to know you're just going to lose all your stuff and you're not going to get any privileges. So I don't think that's the way you want to go because I don't roll that way. But something else is going on and I can tell that. So if you want to grab a football and come outside and play catch, if you want to dump your Legos out, I'll build with Legos and we can talk about it. If you want to go for a walk, I'd love to be a resource and I'd love to help you out with that because I know there's something else going on. That's what's causing you to talk to me like that. And your only 2 options are lose all your stuff, which I know you don't want, or we can move and do something different and I can listen to you and then we can problem solve. I'm good either way. I just think you'll like it better if we do the problem solving way. Does that make sense? See, discipline means literally to teach. It doesn't mean to punish or give consequences or take things away. It means to teach. And what I'm teaching my son is when he's having a bad day, when he's yelling at my wife, when he is yelling at me and using bad language or rolling his eyes, he's always got 2 options, which are one is to continue that behavior and lose everything. And that's not really helpful. But what I'm teaching him is that's usually a sign that something else is going on. And that's why I want to go for a walk with you and eat chips and salsa so that we can get to the root of it. So in this situation with he's yelling at his mother, I walk into the room instead of amping everything up, right? Because that's what I would do is amp everything up. And I always thought, oh, my wife's going to be happy because I'm standing up for her. And what she was really thinking was, you're not standing up for me. You made the night worse because now our son is in his room crying. And I have to spend 3 hours calming him down, explaining that your father doesn't hate you. He just has unresolved issues from childhood. Right. And then I'm resentful toward my wife because if she wasn't so soft on him, I wouldn't have to yell. And she's resentful toward me. That's how it works. Right. So instead of that, I walk into the room in control of myself and say, hey, Casey, I can tell you're frustrated. Listen, when you're ready, if you want to come outside, I was going to grab the football. We can play catch. Here's another one. Casey, I can tell you're frustrated. Listen, I'm going to go in the living room, dump the Legos out. When you're ready, if you want to come build, I bet we could build a really cool spaceship. So we're going to get to the discipline because he doesn't get away with yelling at my wife. But I don't do discipline first. I have to de-escalate the situation first. And how do we do that? Motion changes emotion. So when I walk into the room, I'm in complete control of myself. Hey, I can tell you're frustrated, right? I'm not saying, you know what, you're being a disrespectful little snot. You're just not going to yell at your mother like that. When has that ever resulted in your child saying, "Oh, Father, thank you for the wisdom. I didn't realize that I was being that disrespectful, but now that you pointed it out, so sorry." It doesn't work that way. But when I walk in and I say, "Hey, tell you're frustrated," and then I move, I'm not staying there. I invite them. I lead them with me. I love the phrase, "when you're ready." See if this makes sense. Never, ever, ever use it this way. "Hey, son, when you're ready, get your shoes on because we need to go to an appointment." Never like that. They're not going to get ready. But in an emotional situation, in a power struggle situation, watch the two ways you can do this. Typically, we do this. "You are going to stop that right now, young man." As soon as you say right now, they resist even more. True? So when I say, "Hey, when you're ready," I'm not giving them control, but I'm giving them some ownership. Because when your kids are upset and they're flailing, their world feels like it's out of control. And instead of saying, "You're going to stop that right now," see, that is it doesn't work. When I say "when you're ready," it gives them a sense of control or ownership back. When I walk in the living room and sit and play with Legos, I'm leading them. I like the Legos. Look, it could be, "Mom, you've got 4 or 5 kids. You can't go out and play catch with your child when they're upset." But I can't say, "Oh man, I can." You know what? If I were you, I'd be really frustrated right now. You know what? I need some help. Could you go in the pantry and grab X and bring it here, and you can help me stir this because I could really use your help. So I'm giving him a job to do. I'm using motion because that helps calm kids. I love building with Legos because it's tactile. Look, you know what he's saying inside your child's saying? "I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, I'm upset, and I don't know how to control myself, but you keep yelling at me. Control yourself, stop. Will you calm down?" Mom and Dad, you don't even know how to calm down. I don't know how to calm down, but I do know how to build with my Legos. I do know how to color. I do know how to play with things and build with things that are tactile in my hands. It gives me something I'm in control of in this moment when everything else is out of control. And I love doing that because now watch, here's the big difference that I love. Typically what we do is, "You know what? Go to your room right now. Go to your room until you can." There's nothing wrong with that. But when I just sent my son or daughter up to his or her room, I just sent my child away from the very person who has the wisdom and tools to help them. Instead of sending them away, I said, "Hey, watch what I'm really saying. Something's going on in your world, and I know you can't figure it out. So why don't you come go for a walk? Why don't you come help me stir the soup? Help me cook. Help me do this. Sit with Legos, color with me, do some push-ups. Want to do some jumping jacks?" Dads, any dads that are watching, watch, you don't have to solve everything. It can be as simple as you walk into the room when your child's upset and say, "Hey, Jacob, I forgot something. I got to run up to the store. You want to come help me?" And that's it. And all you have to do is ride in the car. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to be Gandhi. You don't have to solve Middle East peace process. You don't have to do any of that. You just need to get them out of the house for a few minutes and drive in silence up to the grocery store or up to the gas station and go get a candy bar together. And you're eating a candy bar, and maybe you sit in the back of the truck and you sit and talk, and it's a great bonding moment. And you find out that your son was just really frustrated because he didn't make the club team, whatever, at school. Or maybe it's your daughter and she's freaking out at your wife because moms and daughters go at each other. And Dad, you don't have to solve it all. You just said, "Hey, honey, I'm running up to the store. Why don't you come with me?" And it gives her a place. It gives them some space from each other. And you go up there and you go to Taco Bell or you go to McDonald's, you go to whatever, and you get a candy bar or you get a smoothie or whatever. And then you sit in the truck and you don't even talk. Or you go to Dairy Queen because Dairy Queen's awesome, and you get a Blizzard because they have a buy one, get one free special for 99 cents. And you sit in the car and you eat a Blizzard together. And now your daughter dumps on you, say, "Honey, something's going on with you," because it's not like you to yell at your mother, although it is like her. But I know when you yell, something's going on. She says, "Dad, there's this boy at school and I really liked him, but my friend Savannah has been flirting with him and I think he likes her better." And look, that almost, for some reason, almost makes me cry because when you picture that scene, watch what usually happens. You're not going to talk to your mother like that. People are separated. And now can you picture a father and his son or a father and his daughter sitting in his car or in his SUV or in his pickup truck or whatever he's driving, and they're sitting and eating a candy bar or an ice cream, and his daughter starts spilling her guts to him. Is that not a beautiful scene? And now this dad gets to listen and reassure her she's beautiful and that she needs to wait for the right guy and it's going to be okay. And they just had a bonding moment that wouldn't have occurred if he had just reacted. And now they come home and they're going to be smiling and laughing, and mom's going to be resentful because she's like, he just yelled at me. How come you get to do the fun stuff? And he's like, hey, be thankful that I didn't escalate. Mom will be thrilled with you, husbands. I guarantee you, this is inappropriate, but I'm going to do it because it is appropriate. It's just grown up and adult and mature. Most men, the parents that I was talking to today, well, my wife doesn't give me enough attention. And part of that included physical attention. You know why? Because you escalate everything in the home. She spends all of her time managing your emotions. I guarantee if your wife starts seeing you playing catch with your son outside and you're calming your child down, she will be all over you because she will have energy and you will be her hero. Right now, if you are acting like I did, right now, you're just a grown-up kid. You're just a big kid, and she's got to manage you also. No blame, no guilt. Nobody taught you this stuff. We didn't learn this. Our dads didn't teach us. It's not downing you at all. I'm just trying to be honest in that when she looks at you, it's like, look, I've already managing this mom today. She's managing 3 kids with special needs, and her highly successful, super smart husband comes home, and she has to manage him too. I know what's happening in that marriage. She wouldn't say it, but she's getting close to checking out. Because you know what I realized in talking? I hope you don't mind me sharing this stuff. Because I didn't tell her name. You don't know where they live. You don't know this family. But it's very common. It hit me, and I told this mom, I was like, as men, sometimes women have such a high pain tolerance that we don't have. And it's like we think that you're invincible and that you can handle everything. You know why? Because you kind of do all the time. And we take you for granted. And so for the moms out there, for the dads who are listening, know this, tell her, say, I'm sorry for that. I've just kind of expected because you just stepped up. I was talking to this mom and I'm like, when you guys had kids, did you think that you'd need to have like a pharmacist degree to know all the medications that are out there for your kids? Did you think that you were going to have 3 kids that all were different and had all these different needs? You never pictured that. You just thought maybe you'd have a few little power struggles here and there. But all of a sudden you find yourself in this life, and this mom, for her oldest child is 13, has been running herself ragged for 13 years, just trying to hold everything together. And what her husband has learned is, she's a hero. She's pretty great at that. Well, I'm pretty good at work, so I think I'll just hang out at work and work really hard and make a lot of money because I can pay for all this therapy and all of this stuff. And meanwhile, he's losing his wife, and she is very quickly checking out on him. And at some point, she's going to say, I'm not doing it anymore. I can handle the 3 kids, but I can't handle it anymore with you. Like you got to step up. So I really mean that, dads, when you don't have to be a therapist, and I don't want you to stop being a man, but I want you to be the kind of man who comes in and calms the situation. I was working with some parents, and the husband is a firefighter. And it's so interesting because when he shows up at the scene of a fire where everything's burning and collapsing and where people can die, he is calm and in control, and he assesses the situation and he handles it the right way. But then 2 hours later, he walks into his home and Legos are all over the floor, and one of the children is upset and he loses it and he pours fuel on the fire. So my thing to him was, imagine you're walking into a fire. What do you do every day in your job to put out that fire? Do the same, with the emotional fires in your life. Be patient, assess the situation, and put out the fire. We can figure out who set the fire later. We can figure out whether it was arson or whether it's an accident later. We don't have, right? You don't run into the building. Who set this fire? I can't believe that you would set this beautiful building on fire. No fireman does that. He goes in and puts out the fire so people don't die and to minimize the damage. And then once everything's done, then you assess and say, okay, who did this? And I will mention this: humility. Humility is a powerful tool that will break down walls. And I promise, if you use humility with the strong-willed child, I'll give you an example. So I'm just learning this. First 9.5 years of Casey's life, I'm on him. I don't know, you can't do this. And he was difficult. And I wanted him to change. And I finally started learning this calm thing. This was one of the first things that happened. It was the same situation, by the way. He's yelling at my wife about something. So I'm like, you know what? Get up to your room. And so I catch myself. I'm like, hey, I get it. Something's going on. Listen, why don't you go upstairs and dump out some Legos, and I'll come upstairs and I'll help you out. Well, as I go to walk upstairs a couple minutes later, I trip on the Legos that were sitting in the middle of the stairs. And I got furious because how many times do I have to tell you not to leave your Legos in the middle of the floor because someone could trip and someone's going to die, right? And so he's all upset. And so I get up to the room and I want to yell at him and I have to regather myself. And I go up and he's in his room. Now, I have every right, because I'm the adult, to barge into his room and read him the riot act for yelling at his mother, yelling at his sister, doing whatever it is that your kids do. I knocked on the door. I walk in. I sat on the floor and I started building with his Legos. I did not give him eye contact. By the way, do not look your kids in the eyes when they are upset. Please just don't do it. Most of your kids, when they're upset, they have a huge shame impulse. They're ashamed of themselves, and they're internalizing everything and they're beating themselves up. And when you look them in the eyes, it just makes it worse. I don't do that. For the dads out there who are listening, and moms, teach this to your husbands. Almost every man, because it comes with the man handbook, if your kids don't look you in the eyes, that means it's disrespect. I will promise you, for most of your strong-willed kids, it is not disrespect. It is one, kids often think best when they're not looking in the eyes. It's how they process better. I'm 54 and I process better that way. And most of the time, it's not that they don't respect you, it's that they fear you because you're angry at them and you're yelling at them. Look at me when I'm talking to you, right? Because the only time we tell our kids to give us eye contact is when we're angry at them. We never come home and say, look at me. It's a good choice you made. I'm proud of you. But I want you to do that sometime because it's really cool and it'll freak them out. And it's good to give kids intensity when they're doing things well. Because we make the mistake of only getting upset and giving intensity when kids do things wrong. And so their brains start to learn, oh, if I want my dad's and mom's undivided attention, I just do something wrong, because then they put down their phones and they yell at me. And at least I have their undivided attention and their intensity. So I want you to work on giving your kids intensity when they do things well. That was a good choice, my friend. That was awesome. Proud of you. Dads, you don't have to talk a lot. Just a little fist bump and a grunt sometimes is enough because they know you're proud of them. Don't overlook that. It's a huge part of motivating your child. But anyway, I sat on the floor and I started to build. Oh, so don't take that the wrong way, the eye contact thing. And I started building the Legos. I didn't say a single word. 3 or 4 minutes later, what do I hear? Casey slinks down off of his bed. We're sitting off the floor. And what do I hear? Dad, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled at mom and I shouldn't have yelled at you. Humility will lead a child to contrition. I would rather have contrition than a forced apology. You need to apologize right now. Sorry. Right? And we do that all the time. They were like, okay, I guess that's an apology. Humility leads to contrition. And my humility will calm a child down more. Well, but I'm the authority figure. Yeah, I know. And the best authority figures that I've ever known in my life, my best authority figure bosses were people, men who were, and women who were very patient with me, who took time, who taught me, and who were long suffering with me. They weren't the ones who were short and just screamed at me and said, Martin, if you don't shape up, you're going to have to look for another job. That's not a great authority figure. My greatest boss was a guy named Jack Elwell. I don't know if he's still alive. I wish if I could ever find him, I want to thank him. I was a young kid. That man took so much time with me, and I revered him, and I worshipped the snow that he walked on, because we lived in Wisconsin at the time. It was always snowing up there. But that man he was a 6'6" massive guy who was a lineman. He played at Purdue. And this was 30 years ago now. And that man could ream me by looking at me the wrong way, right? And he was so patient with me. That's the kind of authority figure I want to look up to. And so watch, in this situation, remember where, let me close up with this. Remember we did that thing on de-escalating, and I'm telling my son, hey, when you're ready, let's play catch, sit on the living room, play with Legos. Instead of being separated from my son, I am now with my son. And here's what I'm communicating. Son, Casey, write this down if you don't mind. Son, when your world is out of control, mine's not. I can handle you at your worst. Son, when your world is out of control, mine's not. I can handle you at your worst. And I have now just communicated to him a very important principle. So when he is in middle school and high school and is going through really horrible things that we didn't go through until we were much, and being exposed to things that we weren't exposed to, many of us till we were in college or much later in high school, it's happening younger and younger. I want your kids to come to you. I want them to know you're a safe place, right? And if you need help with any of this, I'd encourage you to listen to the Calm Parenting podcast. Email Casey. Will put his email up on your screen. It's casey@celebratecalm.com. Email us. If we didn't get to your question tonight, email us. We will do our best to answer your question, or we might send you to a podcast. We have a special going on. It's a fall clearance sale on all of our CD programs. We have things on for the strong-willed child. We have programs on how to discipline. It's 2 hours long on defiance and disrespect. Casey has a CD program where he talks directly to your kids about their issues, to challenge them to control themselves so you don't have to control them. We have things for toddlers, for older kids, a program for moms, for dads, and that marriage program. We have it all. We've bundled it all together. It's 30 hours worth of very practical, detailed information with scripts to use, and we put that on a big clearance sale for the price of one trip to a therapist's office, but you get about 30 hours worth of it. If you need help with your kids, email Casey. We'll talk about it. We'll get you the right price products within your and this can be 6 months from now. Just say, hey, we're from Prosper. We listened to that thing. Can you help us out? We will help you. But we want to thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to close up with that and close up with a final note, which is enjoy. I encourage you this week. I want you to enjoy your child. Enjoy them. Because if you stopped enjoying your child because they messed up your entire agenda as a parent, no good discipline happens, and there's a lot of strife in there. This week, learn to enjoy your child again, because if you start enjoying them, they'll listen to you more, and you'll be able to discipline them more, and they'll listen to you the first time, and you'll stop the escalations. But thank you to Seth for giving up all of his time to organize this and do this. Thank you for joining us. I hope in the spring, we are able to start traveling back. We are ready to roll. We're going to Ohio and Indiana later this month. They're back in school and opening up. So hopefully, if we will come back to Prosper, and hopefully we'll get to meet many of you in person, and we can answer the questions in person. But thank you all for joining us. And if we can help you in any way, just let us know, okay? Enjoy your school year, and hopefully we'll see you in the spring. Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone. The videos will be posted soon to the website under Gifted and Talented. Thanks again, Kurt, Casey. It's good to see you all again. We appreciated your message.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Seth. See you soon.
Okay, thanks, guys.